Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is January 24th. We're in a new year. We're going to discuss a little bit about what to expect this year, and it's not all good, but it is what it is. If you like the things that we discuss on these calls, I certainly hope you'll subscribe and share these calls with other like-minded individuals. I'm going to try to get a full call in today. It's hard to do because my phone won't stop ringing. There's a lot going on, and a lot of people either want to contact us to get our initial trust package or ask specific questions about the exchange process or some post-RV issues. And with regard to the post-RV issues, I have to defer and say that we just have to postpone some of that discussion because we're heavily involved in all of the things that need to be done pre-RV. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're merely sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant as currency holders ourselves. Most important concern people have is the potential window for the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. And in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, we're done. It's just a matter of when they decide to flip the switch. And I'll get into my explanation for that. But I just see nothing that's an obstacle or an impediment to what I believe should happen at any time, which is, of course, the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar and hopefully some of the other currencies to follow through. What we're actually witnessing today, again, in my opinion, is the implementation of Dr. Shabibi's monetary reform policies, which go back about 15 years. So this has taken a lot longer than any of us thought or expected, but it is what it is. The only way I could kind of explain to you why I think we're pretty much done is if I were in a room with, say, some currency speculators and they'd come to me and say, okay, Jim, we got a little money to work with here. It's money we can afford to lose, frankly. We're looking at maybe investing in some currencies. What currency would you recommend and why? Well, the first currency on the list in a room of speculators would be the Iraqi dinar. And these are some of the reasons that I would advise them to seriously consider investing in the dinar. We know that the country last year, or rather, yes, it was last year, actually, they passed their 3-year budget. We know that budget is in the Gazette and that there have been no major amendments to that budget. We do know that for some reason the government is dragging its feet and delaying on certain payments. The only plausible explanation, as far as I'm concerned, is that they're waiting on a change in the exchange rate, and there'd be no reason for them to do that unless they were operating under the assumption that there will rather soon, sooner rather than later, be a change in the exchange rate. Iraq and the CBI have also gotten involved in multiple international contracts to rebuild their electric grid, water system, roads and bridges, and even a very ambitious plan to build 19 new cities. They simply cannot do that with a program rate, and they have not nearly the amount of USD they would need to fund their budget and pay for those contracts. We also know that the ascension of Iraq to the World Trade Organization is pending, and that they recently submitted some requested information and files, which, in my opinion, they've done everything that they need to do. We know that recently Iraq was invited to speak at Davos. There are no small hitters at Davos. If you're invited to speak at Davos, it's because there's a ripple in the water that you've created, and they want to incorporate you in what they're doing. We also know that Iraq has been invited into the BRICS nations. And incidentally, those of us that have Dong Vietnam was also invited into the BRICS nations. Well, what are the BRICS nations? It's a series of countries. I guess there's about 30 of them now. I'd have to check to see exactly how many that there are. The original members were Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And, of course, there are many more. What they've done and what their intention is to replace the U.S. dollar. All of those countries collectively utilize their own currencies and each other's currencies as reserve currencies rather than the U.S. dollar. And Iraq has been invited into the BRICS. Now, that tells me something else, too. It tells me that at the end of the day, the United States Treasury does not have the control of Iraq, the CBI, and their monetary policy that they once had. Frankly, that's a good thing. And, of course, we know that they've already produced and are holding all of the lower denoms and all of the coinage. Now, that's not an inexpensive proposition. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever to produce lower denoms and coinage at a program rate. So they're telling us in every way that they can that there's going to be a significant change in the exchange rate. Now, there's good news and there's bad news. Let's start with the bad news. The sobering fact is that part of the formula for the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar is the rise of the IQD, the Iraqi dinar, against the USD, the US dollar. Now, we generally speak about that as an interrelationship between those two currencies. But there's another dimension to this now. It's not just a matter of the fact that the dollar is no longer in use in Iraq and that they therefore need to transition to their currency, and as a result, the dinar will increase in value against USD. Also part of the formula is that the USD globally has lost a significant amount of its value. And what I talk about from here on is going to seem a little harsh, but it's the truth, so I really don't care whether you like it or not. You can always just turn me off. But the Biden administration, and there's no other way to say it, has literally taken a wrecking ball to this country. And they've lied through their teeth about it every day for going on 3 years. I've given this some thought, and a lot of the conclusions I've come to are also based on my background. Degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance, which means I'm one hell of a lot smarter than Joe Biden, who in my opinion is nothing more than a bagman for the left. He made a Faustian deal to get himself into the White House, and the only thing he cares about, frankly, in my opinion, is what flavor is his ice cream going to be after dinner tonight. But that's just my opinion. The objective is to destroy the United States as the world's superpower, and beyond that, reduce us from a first world to a third world nation. In order to do that, one of the things they need to do, of course, is to destroy the U.S. dollar. And the best way to do that is to overprint. And they printed trillions. I think it's $6 or $7 trillion in the last 3 years. It's absolutely unprecedented. As a result, the value of the dollar's dropped substantially. The petrodollar, which is the currency, the USD, which is the coin of the realm for the purchase of oil globally, is slowly being replaced by other countries. There's also a move to get manufacturing out of this country, which is one of the reasons they want to move to EVs, the electric vehicles. The electric vehicle runs on a battery, and the amount of earth minerals required to produce just one battery is huge. And there is a country that is very, very wealthy in these minerals, and it's the country of Afghanistan. Do you really think it's just a coincidence that our position in Afghanistan has crumbled, that we left Afghanistan wide open for China. We just abandoned the country. Do you think it's a coincidence that the administration is trying to work out contracts for China to produce these batteries for the electric cars? Then we have the open southern border. A better word for it is the great replacement. And what are they replacing? They are replacing the white Christian middle class with a multicultural, multi-racist underclass. Now, that's not a racist statement. If it is, it's not coming from me, because I'm merely quoting a gentleman who runs the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. So we are really under assault, and that's why this year is going to be a very, very difficult year, because it's an election year, because the left in this country is doing everything to destroy any potential opponent to the re-election of Biden, including people in the Democratic Party that want to oppose him in primaries. Now, the BRICS nations, as they grow, will most likely replace the United States both geopolitically and economically as a global power, in no small part because of everything that's being done to weaken the United States of America. The demise of the dollar, the open border, the transition of manufacturing. But there is good news, for us at least. In terms of the country, I'm of the opinion that as this year goes on, people are going to begin to wake up and realize what's going on and understand that Joe Biden cannot be allowed another 4 years, because I don't think we have 4 more years of this that even the United States could deal with. But personally, we can opt out by taking full advantage of the possession of these pre-valued currencies, because these currencies will revalue. And when they revalue, those of us that have been smart enough and patient enough to hold these currencies will reap a windfall from their revaluation. And I'm not just talking about the dinar, although in my opinion, the dinar is the preemptive currency, the first currency that will probably enjoy a substantial increase in value. But the possession of these currencies is not enough. And the reason this new wealth is not going to be enough is because the people running the country right now are in the process of creating a very confiscatory tax structure and allowing for a very litigious system in our country. So what we can do, aside from owning these currencies and all of the things that we will acquire as we exchange these currencies for other things that we want for ourselves, for our family, charitable work, all of these things, is we need to put these currencies in a situation where they simply cannot be taken from us, either from a tyrannical government, confiscatory tax system, or litigious system. The plan that we have advocated now for over 15 years is the establishment of a family asset protection trust package. And we believe it's the single best method that an individual can use to protect their wealth. Now, there are other things that you can do. For example, you can establish LLCs and sub-S corporations, and they will provide some level of asset protection, but primarily by dividing personal assets from business assets. The problem with the LLCs and the sub-S corporations is they're statutory creatures, meaning they're regulated state by state, meaning that the state knows everything about that LLC, who owns it, what's in it, how does it operate, what's it do. In addition, These entities must pay annual fees, regulatory fees to whatever state they're in. But worst of all, LLCs that are owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. So for these reasons, while these entities do have a purpose, they're not the best way to protect wealth. For those of us that have currencies, we're talking about a substantial increase in our net worth literally overnight. The only asset that's going to provide that protection is a package of irrevocable trusts. Now, a lot of individuals have established a single irrevocable trust, and there is an inherent flaw in that, and it's this. Everything you own is in that one entity. So if that one entity is under duress or involved in civil litigation, that necessarily brings all of the assets within that entity into the litigation. That's not much different than an individual that owns everything. If you're being sued, everything you own is theoretically at risk. But we have created a package of trusts. And by doing so, and I'll explain it in a little more detail, by doing so, you're going to enjoy the best asset protection available. It's bulletproof. There's nothing to compare to it. And again, I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But time is running short because, as I said, it seems that Iraq is poised to move forward. Everything they're doing internally, in terms of their budget, in terms of the multiple international contracts that it's established, its ascension to the World Trade Organization, invitations to Davos, invitations to join the BRICS. None of this makes any sense at all for anyone involved at a program rate. They are all operating under either the assumption or the absolute knowledge that the Iraqi dinar is going to have a substantial change in its exchange rate. And the fact that all of these things are happening at the same time tells me that they're moving very, very quickly to get this done. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of establishing a family asset protection trust. And the things that I discuss here are only available by establishing a family of irrevocable trusts. First, you will protect your privacy and your anonymity. That's because all of the assets within the trust, your entire net worth, is sealed. The general public will have absolutely no knowledge of what is actually in that trust. The only way that trust can ever be pierced is if someone goes to court and shows cause. In other words, they provide for the court probable cause that you have defrauded them or committed some crime. So if you establish this trust, place your assets in this trust, and you're a law-abiding citizen, you basically behave yourself, the protection's airtight. Second, this trust will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. Now, again, I'm discussing this relative to the revaluation of these currencies. If you are holding, for example, 5 million dinar in title, personal title, and it revalues, that means that when you file your return, it will show a substantial increase in earnings above your previous years. That not only will most likely trigger an IRS audit, but it might even be a 6-year audit. Now, such an audit would be time-consuming, it would be expensive, and frankly, it's coming at the absolute worst time because you've just acquired this wealth, and there are many other things you'd much rather be spending your time doing. On the other hand, if you've established our trust and you've assigned our currencies to the trust, that means that the revaluation of these currencies and the wealth that you've accumulated as a result will occur within the trust. Now, this protects you a number of ways. First, this does not affect your personal return because it's occurred within the trust. And there's less than a 10 or 15% chance of an audit if such an accumulation of wealth were to occur within a very sophisticated trust package such as ours. But most importantly, even if the IRS determines that they want to do an audit. They can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. That's all there is. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currency to family and friends in certain situations. Now, if you gift pre-RV currencies to friends and family, you can, by doing so, you will be able to avoid the federal gift tax. But for a lot of people, that's a problem because while from a tax standpoint it's advantageous, you're hesitant for some reason to give certain individuals a substantial lump sum. Well, the way to get around that is to gift them the pre-RV currencies through the specially designed gift subtrust within our package. By doing so, you will not only avoid the federal gift tax, but you'll also have complete control of the post-RV proceeds, meaning you can manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals based on your objective determination of what their needs would be. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. Now, ordinarily, probate can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But if anyone wants to challenge your estate, all they need to do is record that challenge with the probate court, and that could tie the estate up for years and sometimes even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access to their respective inheritance. Then there's the federal estate tax that the federal government would assess on the transfer of that estate to heirs. Under current law, the federal estate tax can be as much as 65% of the value of the entire estate. However, once again, if your currencies are in our trust and all of your assets and net worth are in that trust and you should pass away, this trust will allow you to avoid probate entirely and therefore avoid any public disclosure of what was in your estate. And irrespective of the size of the estate, the federal estate tax will be zero. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to avoid something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's say, for example, you purchased 5 million dinar for $5,000. The currency revalues for a conservative $3. You transfer the currencies to the trust pre-RV at a value of $5,000. Post-RV, they revalue for $15 million. You now have $15 million in your trust. But despite that fact, you can only be sued for $5,000 because that's all the currencies were worth when you transferred them out of title to our trust package. Because you did that, there will be no lawsuit. And even if someone were to go to the trouble to file a suit, once their attorney learned that there was no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, they just walk away. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why you've established a package of trusts. So let's pursue this example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer them to the trust, they revalue for a conservative $15 million. Now that you have $15 million in trust, decide to make some purchases. Purchase a larger primary home, say a vacation home, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, how does this protect you from litigation? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, You have an accident. The accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim, understandably, is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your sub-trusts of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that sub-trust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family, and mercifully, you will not be involved in any of those negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole, and all of your other assets are safely protected in the other sub-trusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate sub-trusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident. Therefore, the plaintiff would have no standing to pursue them. So your package of trusts work very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The remaining cargo is protected by the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. This is how the trust works. This is why it's the best asset protection available, and this is why wealthy individuals routinely establish such trusts. But the one advantage you have is that you are aware of the fact that you will, in the not-too-distant future, be a wealthy individual. So by establishing the trust and assigning the currencies to that trust, you not only will be able to acquire this wealth, but you will be able to cap any potential civil loss to the value of the currencies at the time you transfer them to the trust. Now, I'm going to discuss the trust a little bit further in a minute, but, well, let me just go ahead and do that. Our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, and then assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one optional gift sub-trust if you wish to give currencies to family and friends and control the post-RV proceeds, and then 8 additional sub-trusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost from anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to market this trust to denarians, we knew that many would not be able to afford that. So by basically deferring the funding of the trust and simplifying the package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. There are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front, we'll discount the price to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. That's not possible. We even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the Iraqi dinar revalues globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place should be able to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we would work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place for all of the reasons that we've discussed here. Now, before I proceed, I mentioned that I'm going to say some things here that are a little harsh, but I think they need to be said. This country is in trouble. because there's one party in this country that pretends to care about this country rather. But this party is in fact a progressive party. And the difference between progressivism and Marxism is very, very slim. You can Google for yourself Marxism or cultural Marxism. As a matter of fact, take a few minutes and Google something called cultural Marxism, and it will read like a progressive handbook. They use the word progressive because they don't want to use the word Marxism or Marxist. That's the truth. And I'll give you an example of some of the tricks that they utilize. The first is the term, we're saving our democracy. The term loosely falls under something called neuro-linguistic programming. It means they say something knowing you think it means one thing when it means something entirely differently. First of all, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional representative republic. And the progressive system, which is over 100 years old now, it began in the early 20th century, was established not to progress in the sense of what we think. When we think to progress, it means to get better, but that's not their use of the word. Their objective was to, quote unquote, progress beyond the colloquial constraints of the Constitution. In other words, the Constitution limited government, and the people determined exactly what the government could and couldn't do, as opposed to them saying, as a government, we'll determine what the people can and cannot do. So when they say saving our democracy, they don't mean all of us in the collective. They mean the one party social democracy that they're trying to create. Now, if you doubt me, just let me tick off some of their primary objectives. First, to interfere in elections because they don't want elections. You accuse the other side of what you've done. Of course, Republicans are accused of election interference, but which party is trying to imprison their number one opponent? Which party is trying to block members of its own party that want to challenge Biden? The Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party, and they've made no bones about this, they want to stack the Supreme Court. They want to end the Electoral College. They want to end the Senate filibuster, which eliminates minority rights entirely. And they've made it crystal clear they want to either amend or repeal the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the 10th Amendment. That does not sound like a democracy to me. After the Constitutional Convention determined the government, the federal government this country would have, one of the citizens approached Benjamin Franklin and said, well, what have you given us, sir? Benjamin Franklin's response was, a republic if you can keep it. Well, by some miracle or manifest destiny or whatever you want to call it, 240 years later, though it's hanging by a thread, we still have our republic. But what did Benjamin Franklin mean by that? As an historian, as an intellectual, what he meant by that was the knowledge that republics tend to degenerate into oligarchic systems, one-party systems, or totalitarian systems. That is exactly what you are witnessing in this country today. And one of the protections you have, particularly your Fourth and Fifth Amendments, this trust will protect. The problem the left has in this country is that pesky Constitution. They can't figure out how to get rid of it. There's only one thing left, complete and total chaos and the threat of war. It's the only thing left to either suspend, if not revoke, the Constitution. I think they will fail at it. I think this is going to be a very difficult year, because we have some very bad dudes running this country right now. I'm not just talking about the White House and the House and the Senate. We've created, since the end of World War II, an administrative state where unelected bureaucrats are determining international and national domestic policy. And this has got to stop. And the next election is going to determine which way this nation goes. But the only thing we can do, aside from get involved ourselves, particularly if we have these currencies and we have great expectations, and rightfully so, for this accumulation of wealth, is to protect it for ourselves, for our family, and hopefully for some of the charitable things that we want to do, because we don't want the federal government just determining our charitable contributions. We want to decide for ourselves where the money is best spent. Now, last thought, and then we're going to go to a little Q&A here. But you need to understand this last reason why you need to establish this trust package. Frankly, whether you have currencies or not, if you're an American citizen, you need to be involved, you need to vote, you need to do the things you need to do to protect the things that you've worked for. But you need to remember and understand that under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can either lose control of them or lose them outright. And it's at precisely those times that you need and want control that it could all go south on you. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced directly in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are, of course, investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So, in fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you think are going to increase substantially in value. You need to get them out of title and into trust before that occurs. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. So we're going to go to the Q&A here. Before we do, I want to give you, let me go ahead and just open the Q&A. Before we get any potential questions, I do want to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC.com. If you'd like to get our initial no-obligation package. And by the way, the package does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. Package has a lot of information about us, about the currencies, these trusts, and how they work, what our plans are, including some post-RV issues. You can either contact us by email or phone to get that package. Our email address is trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com, and our phone service is 307-274-4122. Again, contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to get our initial no-obligation package out to you. You can contact us by email or phone if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. Excuse me again. Let's go ahead. We have our Q&A here. Our first caller is area code, area code 509. That's 509. Go ahead.
Hi there, Jim. This is Art in Washington State, Eastern Side. And I had a question in reference to the exchanging at the time. Of course, you may recall my wife and I have your trust, and my sister has your trust as well. She lives on the west side. And does she we are her trustees, my wife and I. Does she need to be present at the time of the exchange if we have documentation of the trust?
If you have our trust, and this is not our requirement, this is what the banks are going to require. The bank will require that the settlor or creator of the trust and the trustees must be present at the exchange. This is one of the reasons why we only advocate the establishment of one trustee pre-RV, because that limits the people present to the settlors of the trust and the one trustee. But if you have, for example, two trustees and a protector, the bank will require they all be there. Now, the trust specifically states in the memorandum of trust, which is one of the three documents on the last pages, specifically states that any transaction can be conducted solely with the presence of one trustee. But these banks don't care. They have their little stupid little rule book, which is utterly irrelevant, so they're going to make life difficult for you. So we've streamlined it by strongly suggesting you establish the trust with one trustee, and then you can add a second trustee and a protector post-RV.
Okay, so that basically what you're saying is, yes, my sister will need to be there at the time.
Correct.
And we'll need to coordinate to have her, or we go over to her to establish the bank account.
Right. Well, if she's your trustee and you're her trustee, you could arrange a joint appointment and you knock it both out. You're there for her trust and she's there for your trust.
No, it's not that way. We're her trustees, and we have two other individuals.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then, yeah. Well, the simple answer is, if you have our trust, the bank will require that all the settlers and all the trustees be present at the exchange.
Okay. I was presuming that, but I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth. Thank you very kindly.
Sure. Okay.
You take care. God bless you, sir. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 415. That's 415. Go ahead.
Great risings, Jim. This is Al from Left Coast. How are you this great day?
Big Al, how are you doing?
A lovely moment, and thank you for all your tutelage for the many years. What is it, 13 years now, I believe?
Something like that, yeah.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah. We're all ready to get off of this ride. I know I am.
Well, to be honest, everybody says that, but for me, it's been enlightening because all the things that necessarily we should know to protect our newfound wealth, there's been like going to a university for the past 13 years and figuring out left, right, jab or hook or whatever.
Well, that's actually a very good point. People learn in life a couple of things. Success isn't always the best teacher, and sometimes adversity and difficulties, if we're careful, we not only learn a lot, we actually become better people in the process. So, I never thought about it that way, but that's actually a good point.
So it's been enlightening for me. I'm to that point where another crinkle has come up, and the idea that, maybe you have better knowledge than most, so I feel that it's pertinent to ascend in the right fashion. What I'm hearing, and I know nothing about it, but if you were to get a offshore trust or offshore banking, that you necessarily need or have to have a LLC. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. There's a number of things that you can establish offshore, and there are a number of different jurisdictions and venues depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. Now, we do have individuals for a number of reasons that want to establish offshore entities, and a lot of them are particularly disturbed by what's going on in this country, And what I've suggested to them is, well, you'll utilize, in other words, assets will go into your trust package with us, our Family Asset Protection Trust. And from there, they will then go to LLCs or other trusts that you're establishing. I mean, you can get really, really exotic, or you can just want to have money offshore for the sake of it. One example might be, well, if they have a central bank digital currency, I feel I'll be losing control of my currency, so I want to establish offshore trusts, and I will do so using other national currencies. So there's lots of different strategies that people will utilize. Of course, that will be something we'll be discussing in more detail after we've acquired this wealth and after we see politically what happens in this country. Now, I do know that recently Trump said that there will be no central bank digital currency. If he's reelected, he won't allow it. But even if he wanted it, it would have to pass Congress. Fortunately, at least for the time being, the Republicans are in control of one house of the Congress, so it would be literally impossible for the central bank digital currency to be passed unless the Republicans caved on it, which I don't think that they would do. But I also think over the course of this year, people are going to become much more educated about a digital currency. There are advantages to a digital currency, but the great disadvantage to me is what they're saying is when we no longer have a hard currency. When you have a hard currency, you're in possession of it. When there's a digital currency, the government's in possession of it. So they therefore feel that it's their right to control the currency that they're letting you use. It's theirs, and they're just letting you use it. So I mean, I'm vehemently opposed to a central bank digital currency. But if it were to happen, there are certain states that have already said we will create a state digital currency, and there will be no credit score or control of the wealth. So smart people will transition to that. Now, that's one of the reasons that the people in government right now, at least on the Democratic side, don't like the 10th Amendment. They don't like states' rights. That's why they always try to associate it to slavery, even though it was the Democratic Party that was the slave party. So once again, we're dealing with some people that just aren't straight up with us. So we'll just have to see how that works. But I'm going to do everything I can to avoid a digital currency because I don't think how I spend my money is any of their business. That gets into a 4th and 5th Amendment rights issue too. So we'll just see what happens.
Okay, well, last thing, and it's a little off-key, but it's coming back to what Dr. Shabibi said, approximately 16-1 or higher, and it appears we're possibly in that vector. So this 3, 4, 5 crap is out the door. As well, the ISX stocks is about to hit the general public of the United States. So people are going to, of course, invest into that because it pays a higher return than anything from the U.S. It's good to a great degree. The ISX stock actually was afforded privately some years back, and the ROIs on that is going to be phenomenal. I mean, it's crazy. 16-24-1. You're going to need asset protections just to be able to count it, let alone to keep it stern.
I understand the argument why some postulate that it could be as high as that. I actually could see the dinar get as high as $9. I could see that. One of the reasons I say that is the Kuwaiti dinar, when it revalued, went up over $7. So, I could see that happen. But I'd rather be more conservative and undervalue. So, 3, 4, 5, you may think that's extremely low, but I'll be honest with you. If the dinar came out at $3 tomorrow, I'd be hard-pressed not to go to the bank and end all of this, largely because I'm 72 years old and time has become the precious commodity for me. And frankly, I don't need 4, 5, 6, 7, 16. I'll just do fine with 3. To be honest with you, I'd be fine with 1. But when, I have to be a little bit careful in predictions because there are people out there that have made all kinds of wild predictions over the last 15 years, things that never came to fruition. And, you know, I've got to kind of stay the course. And so the 3 to 5 range I'm very, very comfortable with. And I'm not saying these higher numbers aren't possible. I just got to stay in my wheelhouse. And so that's why I'm at that 3 to 5 range. I think the current Basel IV compliant extrapolated rate's $4.85, and I think that's extremely possible.
Well, okay, I concede, agree to disagree, but one, keep your wheelchair close, and two, the 72 is the. I mean, you're gonna faint when they say 16, 24 to 1. So you got the wheelchair, so you ain't got to worry. You just sit down.
Well,
and two, 72 is the new 40. So you better get ready for this roller coaster ride.
Yeah, well, I got 7. How many do I got? 7 children, 9 grandchildren, and 2 in the oven. So they're wearing my ass out. So, but in a good way.
Get ready for the great grandkids because you're going to welcome them, and they're going to say, "Look here, my great grandpa was an entrepreneur."
Yeah. Right. Well, listen, I got to move on here, but
cool.
you're right. Shabibi, the fact that Shabibi was talking double digit on the dinar, he's no dummy. I mean, Shabibi was on track. Shabibi got sidelined. I don't want to get into the whole political thing, but Shabibi got sidelined, and it was a shame because this could have happened 10 years ago. But it is what it is. We are where we are, and let's move on. But hey, thanks for your call. Take care.
Much thanks. Great day.
Take care now. All right, our next caller is area code 801. That's 801. Go ahead. You there, 801?
Hello?
Yes, 801. Hello? Well, I'm going to try this one more time. Hang on a sec here. 801, are you there? Well, I guess we lost 801. He was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Once again, our contact information, if you'd like to get our initial package, you can go to our email, which is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. Our next call is next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye now.